In this episode, a lesson on simplicity in photography by the brilliant portrait photographer Platon. The first time I remember ever seeing a photograph by the British Greek photographer Platon, it was his famous black and white portrait of Willie Nelson hugging his guitar. I was still living in Texas at the time, and I saw it on the cover of Texas Monthly magazine. The raw, refined starkness and beauty of that portrait took my breath away, and I remember thinking that it wasn't very often that you saw a black and white photograph on the cover of that magazine, and it was really striking. In April of this year, Netflix published a fascinating video about Platon to YouTube, and I sat for nearly 45 minutes totally transfixed as the photographer revealed his working methods, his background, and his philosophies. As someone who constantly struggles to find simplicity and an almost minimalist focus in my own work, I was taken by what Platon said about the topic of simplicity in his photography. Here's Platon's advice for finding simplicity in a photographic composition, and this is a quote. "My father used to do these beautiful drawings in pen and ink. I grew up with this sort of black and white aesthetic in my head. It was so bold. I spent most of my adult life in the dark with a small red light on, trying to find that visual language." And then he points to one of his father's ink drawings. And then he says, quote, "If it's necessary, it's in there. If it's not necessary, it's not in there. So strip it down. Simplify it. Just go for the core." And that's quoted in the episode Abstract, The Art of Design, Platon Photography on Netflix and also on YouTube. You can skip ahead to 11 minutes and 39 seconds to see the quote, but be sure to watch the entire video because it's full of golden nuggets. I have a section on my website called Minimalist Compositions. It holds some of my favorite photographs that I've ever made. I tend to think that most photographs are improved when they're kept simple. Landscape photographs especially can become extremely busy with all the natural textures, details, light, and shadows going on within the frame. I think that's particularly true when the landscape is shot in black and white. Studio photographs like the ones Platon makes are much easier to control. He almost always shoots against a plain white backdrop. Landscapes, on the other hand, are much harder to control from a simplicity point of view. That's why fog photography is so perpetually popular. Of course, it creates a powerful mood, but it also just makes landscape photography intrinsically more simplified and easier to process visually. Another way to simplify a photograph is through depth of field. I love to photograph intimate details of the landscapes like flowers, thistles, and raindrops on tree branches with an open aperture to throw the background out of focus, thereby adding emphasis to the main subject and making the background a soft blur. I try to watch for things in the background that can create uncomfortable visual noise. For example, a stray branch crossing the visual plane that can become a big blurry stripe, or clusters of light or dark flower blossoms that can turn into unrecognizable, distracting blobs. Anyways, this is just a short episode, but I wanted to highly recommend the video about Platon. It's free to watch on YouTube, and it's very inspirational. As always, the related links and sources are in the description. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again real soon.